let's take a look at part 2 of your final projects. Again, overall, I think that these work pretty well. There's some things overall I think that I need to talk about, minor things, but some things that I think everybody could work on a little bit, like this. As far as these logos, I know I should have been more specific. I believe I mentioned it in class, but maybe not. That these logos can be copy and pasted rather than placed. I know that sometimes that's not typical, but when the logos are actually, these are Illustrator EPS files, so you can open them in Illustrator and copy and paste them rather than placing them. And this will allow you to scale them a little bit easier. Not that the size of these ads are unruly or anything, but it'll help a little bit with scaling and things like that, and moving them around and manipulating, etc. Like if there's a slight overlap, although there's clear, never mind, because it's an Illustrator EPS, so it doesn't have a background behind it, which is good. Yeah, it overlaps. Anyway, so yeah, we can copy and paste our logos rather than placing them, but it's relatively minor. It's easy to fix. So let's start talking about these, starting with Lance. So I like the idea that you have started here. What I might do is bring down all of these logos to the bottom, and sort of, this is super rushed, but kind of visually organize them so they take up about the same amount of visual space. It takes a little bit of organizing. Again, this is sort of by design, not to sort of nitpick these, but as I'm sort of, obviously do a little bit better than this. I don't mind the main logo down at the bottom, or down at the bottom right. I was blanking on my left and right. What I might do is break up this text block a lot more. I kind of like what you've done to use colors to break it up, which works to a point. It does make it a little bit busy. What I might do is break up all of these text boxes so that they're all separate boxes, and then you can manipulate them individually. But what I might do is move everything down a little bit here. Maybe even getting rid of this box. I feel like there's a lot visually going on. And then this gives you a little bit more room to sort of stylize your headline a little bit more. And as we go through, not to copy other people, but as we go through, you'll see the treatments that other people did. Maybe put the tagline underneath here, and then you can start to sort of break up these text blocks a little bit more. Have this tagline sort of centered along here, and then again, I might make this, keep a little bit smaller, maybe make this centered a little bit larger, bring out the sizing of your contact info. And then this legal statement, we don't need this part, just this part. So I'm going to cut that actually, and then paste it. And I might bring that down to 10 point, and then you can kind of tuck that even under here in the bottom right, or even bottom left, to sort of balance out this space a little bit if you need to. And then that sort of frees up this area for your collection kit info to make that a little bit larger. You could even potentially center this text in here. But really kind of breaking up and reorganizing this is going to be the key for yours. I think it had a good start, but I think some moving things around, playing with some different font sizes to emphasize different portions of it, and then just kind of cleaning it up overall, I think would work very well here. All right, we went to Christine's. I'll zoom in a little bit. Again, excellent start. We want to make sure that these logos are staying proportional. This one looks like it's a little bit squished vertically. This one we lost. That needs to be centered. As you can see here, all of that is centered. So I think you might have lost an element here, making sure that we're keeping our logo elements together. One of the drawbacks to copying and pasting, if you have a more complex logo like this, you want to make sure that you're selecting all and grouping, so that way you're not forgetting an element. What I kind of like to do is, I don't know, like if I have two objects, you know, just for argument's sake, if I have two objects here and I want to make sure that I grab them all, what I'll do is I'll move them just to make sure, like, oh, that's not grouped, okay, and then now I know either I have them all or I can group them from there, and then now I know I didn't leave it behind. It's just kind of a goofy little thing that I do. I'll like I said, I'll move one element just to make sure that I have everything I need. But yeah, this one looks a little bit distorted vertically as well. But again, I think it's a great start. I think what you might be able to do is maybe make this a little bit bigger, make these three logos smaller and kind of work them into this area. And again, have your lens crafters legal info here down at the bottom. Drop this down a little bit. I like this treatment for the headline that you have going on here. Maybe bring this headline larger across the top. And then sort of reorganizing this, if you wanted to bring this line underneath here to organize this info, maybe even center this text, see if it flows a little bit better. And then it gives you room to make this, even if you bring in your line spacing a bit, yeah, if you bring your line spacing a bit, it's tough to tell with the exported JPEG what size these are, but you know, maybe even making this a little bit smaller and bolder so it's a little bit easier to read. It's a little bit, the text is a little bit tricky to read, especially if we zoom out. Oops, I'll zoom back in. As it's horizontally squeezed a little bit, it looks like, so it's the letters are a little bit taller and thinner, so it's a little bit tricky to read. Maybe going with a bold font, and then definitely going a little bit bolder here with your contact info. Again, maybe even bringing this line down to sort of separate these two text areas, but again, kind of creating this like C shape, you know, with headline, logo, logos, and then it sort of frees up this open space to sort of reorganize your text, your informational text a bit. But it's a good start. All right, and Collin here. This one's a little bit rougher for a draft, but again, kind of looking at some of the other pieces, if you wanted to start with the logo upper right, you know, don't forget you have the AAA logo should be somewhere in there. You know, again, if you wanted to use this area, you know, maybe using this area for your three logos and then headline, and then breaking up the information in this area, kind of having like a graphic-ish area. You know, if you had the three logos this way, obviously you'd have to adjust them so that they're relatively visually similar, you know, and have your third logo here, even have your all rights reserved underneath or down here, and then this sort of frees up your area for your headline and organizing your text. You know, again, don't forget that third logo there. But yeah, I think, you know, even if you wanted to drop this down and have a headline go all the way across to create this sort of reverse C shape, or like I said, if you wanted to leave this area for logos and then leave this area a little bit more open for organizing your text, I think could work pretty well. All right, I'm going to Andrea's. Great start here. I think I'm going to say the opposite that I've been saying for some of the other people. Maybe make these overall a little bit bigger, even if you wanted to bring them, bring them a little bit closer together, and make, don't rotate it. Make these overall just a little bit, you know, a little bit bigger. Obviously, you'd have to clean it up more than I just did. I like how you have it visually organized. You know, the larger logo to the right, or to the left rather, and then you have your 10th annual site night. Don't forget about the trick or treat for a cause headline. Again, you could potentially make this a little bit smaller. This sort of frees up this space a little bit, and you could have your trick or treat. Where is it? Let's go back. There you go, trick or treat for a cause on site night. You don't forget that. So you have trick or treat for a cause on site night, and then you have, you know, it's the 10th annual site night. You could even put this potentially on one line. Oh, you have it in text box, that's why. You could even potentially put that on one line, maybe make it a little bit smaller to fit in that space there underneath the headline. And then if you wanted to use, you know, again, kind of make these a little bit larger. Oh, it's not gonna let me do that. I have to use a scale tool. So if you make everything a bit larger here, obviously, you know, a little bit better than that. And then I don't mind what you have here. Again, scale, making that much larger, and you might need to adjust your actual box that you have broken up there. And I would play around with more, you know, bold fonts. Maybe having a bold font here and a bold font for your site night, and then kind of bookend it with the 10th annual site night, Help the World See. You've got a really good start for that visual hierarchy. You know, I think maybe playing around with some more playful fonts for your headline, and maybe even use something for these two lines, or keep them just kind of more bold would work. Even if you wanted to increase your line spacing here a little bit, just to push, you know, again, and even here, just so that you're, oh, where's our character? Oh no, let's escape that. So here we go, character. And then increase the line spacing there just to give it a little bit of room to breathe, so the letters aren't like really right on top of each other. And that can kind of sort of fill, not that you want a tight space, but that'll sort of fill your space a little bit. But I think, you know, again, a really great start, a little bit of organization, getting rid of that extra guy there, and having, you know, a headline at the top. Yeah, and just kind of reorganizing this could really work. All right, let's go to Kai's. All right, and then again, I like the treatment we have here. I think, again, here, the logos are a little bit kind of sporadic, for lack of a better word. You know, I would choose a spot to have them sit so that they're all, give or take, this is obviously can be better, but give or take, they're all like one sort of visual size. And either you know, you could potentially center them depending on how you're going to organize your information, or, you know, have them towards the left a little bit. You know, moving this down, I might actually play around with the idea of, I think you might have clicked an extra empty text box there. It looks like you have a text thread somehow going on when you moved something. You have overset text somewhere. Huh. That's strange. Yeah, I would just double check the logo, maybe even recopy and paste it, because it looks like it's super easy to do accidentally. If you have, it looks like you might have turned that shape into a text box or something. Super easy to do by accident. But yeah, I would just double check that. But what I might do is, if you wanted to do like trick or treat for a cause, or even have your trick or treat broken up, you know, larger here, and obviously you need to, you know, arrange it a little bit better than I am right now, but to sort of fill that space and make that space a little bit more even, you know, don't be afraid to break these up, and play around with, you know, with sizing of these, you know, sizing of your headlines, you know, something like that. And then that allows you to sort of fill this space and break it up a little bit more. I might, again, separate these. I'm cutting there. And then this way you have, you know, you can make this a little bit bigger. You know, go with the center paragraph there, even center paragraphs on all of it. But I think just kind of like playing around with the different sizing, I think your visual hierarchy works fairly well. You know, even centering this, I'm not sure, that's not too bad. But yeah, play around with your sizing, you know, getting these logos to be a little bit more organized, so we don't have these gaps here. Again, even if we wanted to have these more on the right, You know, we could even make these a little bit smaller, but you're getting the sort of general idea. And then, you know, increasing the size of your logo. You know, it sort of shrinks up this space, but you can work with it still with your text, you know, just by moving your text or decreasing the size of your text a little bit, but you sort of get the idea of what I'm talking about. So yeah, don't be afraid to break up text blocks, move things around, play around with headlines, things like that, to create some visual interest with, you know, a pretty boring, potentially boring ad. All right, Aidan's is next. So there's a lot going on here. Your sizing is off, so you need to make sure that, let's go back to Kai's. 7 3/4 by 6 high. So we need to make sure that we have that sizing correct. And then your logos are all disordered, but we want to just make sure that we are, you know, organizing these visually, so that they are legible, but also visually legible and appealing as well, and kind of drive the viewer's eyes through the piece, and also have that visual hierarchy of information, the who, what, when, where, you know, when we talked about it, going back to the birthday party invitation kind of style. So yeah, so I would say obviously you don't want to have a giant text block and then random images. This is going to take a lot of work to sort of get it where it needs to be. And again, correct sizing. And then I would encourage you to take a look at some of the others, not to say to copy the others, but take a look at some of the others and some of the notes I had for the others to see, like, you know, some tips and tricks on things to make, you know, to make these ads as appealing as they possibly can be. All right, Ella's. So this one, while I think it's a good start, there are a couple of things. I like what you did personally, but there are a couple of things here. We're not using any other graphics. You know, the only graphics that we're using, the only other graphics that we're using are the graphics that are provided, so the logos. So unfortunately, I would say the glasses are out. But what you have created for yourself here, I think your info needs to be a little bit more stylized. And again, like, think about that visual hierarchy. Again, maybe look at some of the other submissions and notes and things like that to see what other people are doing. But I think you set it up. You know, you have a nice spot for your headline, potential decent spot for breaking up and creating that visual hierarchy with the information. But we need that site night logo. So even if we have the site night logo here, give or take, and then the sponsor logos here, that gives you, you know, pretty much like the top corner. You know, again, if we almost have this like C shape with headline, or reverse C shape, I guess, headline, logo, logos, and then it gives you sort of a more square area to play around with. And then lastly, we're only working black and white. So I see the appeal of using color, but even if you wanted to use some kind of color, you could potentially use like a gray, and then that way you can include some white elements. You know, if you wanted to include some white text, or, you know, a white drop shadow, things like that. But we're specifically working black and white here for all of these. But I think you've set up a pretty decent, you've blocked out a pretty decent space to arrange and you know, design this. All right, Dom. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Great start. I think here I might make, try to think a little bit. I might make these logos, or this LensCrafters logo, a little bit bigger specifically. And then you'll have to see where you can kind of squeeze this legal info in. I might bring the Site Night logo down and over maybe a couple clicks, just so it's like not right on the edge. I put this border on it just because I had a JPEG, so to see where the edge is. But I think what you did with your headline works really well. I think your main sort of trouble spot here is going to be, you know, breaking out this giant block of text a little bit. You can even make, you know, if you wanted to go till after afford it, make that its own group of text, and you can kind of make that a little bit smaller, maybe not 10 point, but if you went, you know, 12-ish to see, and you had that one text block, and then make this a little bit bigger. Even if you had, don't be afraid to put returns in here. You can kind of separate these how you want. So if you had like a return here for information and a free collection kit, and then put a return there, visit site9.org, and then have another return or call toll free, and have that be bold, just so that like who to contact info looks a little bit better and separates a little more. But I think again, you've really set up a good sort of template for yourself, with a sort of C shape with logo and headline. You might even be able to make your headline a little bit smaller, or if you wanted to do the, have trick or treat on one line and for a cause on site night smaller on one line, to sort of give it a little bit more visual interest, I think could work really well. All right, Benjamins, I'm going to zoom in again. Again, I think a great start. I really like what you did with the top here. Sorry, I got my dog trying to get him out of that. I like what you did with the headline here. You might even be able to pump this up a little bit bigger. Maybe not by a ton, but just to kind of, you don't want to squeeze the space, but sort of fill that space a little bit. And I think here you have a really good organization. You need to make sure that that logo looks a little bit funky. Well, that was a bad, let's see. Yeah, I think we need to make sure that we're not messing with that logo there. I think we might have accidentally moved a piece of the logo, but I think what you can do, I think you have a really great start, and what you might be able to do is actually just kind of like make things bigger in general. So if you had your site night logo large in this area, moved these logos and the all rights reserved, or even kept it in the center, but move these logos here, here, and then honestly just kind of drop these down a little bit, drop this down a little bit, even put a return in, break up this text line or text box, so you could potentially even have it on 3 lines. So you have like your information for a collection kit on one line, visit site9.org on the other line, and call toll free, or however you break that up, just to sort of get that a little bit bigger. I like the idea of having it bold, and this is more plain, but maybe even bump it up a couple points. Like if it's 12 point, maybe try 14. You might need to visually organize a little bit, but you actually have a lot more room than you think. So like for a lot of these ads, like again, you don't want to like look like it's squeezed, but you kind of want to fill the space a bit with these kind of like newspaper ads. So I think for you, I think the organization works well. I think it's going to be kind of playing around with sizing a little bit to kind of to fill some of the empty space that you have here and here. And I think, one simple thing is, making the logo a little bit bigger, give or take about here to this area. And then that gives you a nice sort of square-ish area to rearrange and play around with your text sizing to sort of fill that space. All right, Alexander. So pretty good start. I think here I might lose this extra box that you have here. And again, I might, well, depending, I'm trying to see. Yeah, it looks like you have some extra space at the bottom. Again, we're working black and white, so if you did want to have any kind of color in the background, I don't mind the tan personally, but I would do like a gray if you're going to have a color in the background, or just leave it white. But it looks like you have some extra space at the bottom. This is JPEG, so I can't really see the size that you had, but provided your sizing is correct and it actually goes down to the bottom here, I would move all of these down to the bottom a little bit, get rid of that extra box that you have, and I might center this, even drop this on a line in between here, so separate this section so you have, this block separate from this block, and you can even decrease your line spacing here, make that a little bit tighter, center that in this space, and then again going center justified, basically have, you have it broken up well, and the bold works well. So for information kit, blah, 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 visit, and then site9.org, and then maybe put the or call on this line, and then have the number on that line, and then separate this, help the world see this Halloween. You know, and I think tightening this up a little bit, center justifying it, could help give you a little bit more room to work with here. And then maybe bring this logo, you know, in a couple clicks to the right and down a little bit, just to sort of declutter. And then, yeah, I would center this headline that you have, center it within this space so you don't have this like awkward empty space. But I think it's a really good start. All right, let's go to Alyssa's here. Again, great start. I think that you have your visual hierarchy set up really well. Your text blocks are broken up well. I might, again, I feel like I'm saying the same thing. This happens a lot with this assignment. You know, definitely make this Lions logo a little bit smaller. Maybe increase the lens crafters a little bit, but basically make these relatively similar, visually similar, size-wise, and see if you can get them maybe in this space, and then possibly increase the size of your site night logo, or if you can make all of these a little bit, like these two a little bit smaller, this one significantly smaller, get them tighter together, and if they're even in kind of like this-ish area, and then you could have your Help the World See This Halloween, even if it's on 2 lines here. And then that'll give you some room maybe to bump this up a little bit, maybe make the number and the website bold. But I think how you have it broken up works really well. This block of text you can kind of leave sort of as is, and then maybe just draw a little bit more attention to the contact info. And then lastly, I might play around with, you know, maybe some sort of more playful fonts if you would like, because it is a Halloween ad technically. You know, you can get a little bit more creative, I guess, for lack of a better word. You can get a little bit more creative with some more playful fonts at the top, even with just the trick or treat. And if you had For a Cause on Site Night on one line underneath, and had trick or treat larger. But you know, again, don't be afraid to play with fonts for headlines, because usually they're pretty big so that you can read them a little bit easier, even if you use a more funky font, as long as it's not super duper funky. And it's totally not readable, but I don't expect people to do that. But yeah, I think you set yourself up really well for some minor adjustments to tweak these ads just a little bit. And then lastly, Kaelyn. And I think here again, we have a decent setup for your ad. I think your logos are just about, give or take, just about this, you know, a good visual weight evenly. You want to make sure that this one isn't distorted. It looks like it might be a little bit distorted horizontally. But what I might do is kind of see if you can keep the similar format, and you have a lot of free space here. So even if you kind of kept this format, and you know, even kind of shifted everything to the left, if you wanted to shift things to the left. This is why it helps to group. You know, and then you could have your Site Night logo here, give or take. You don't want it to be super massive, but you get the general idea. You know, if you had your Site Night logo, give or take here, you could even have, you know, your For a Cause be, no, if I spelled it right. And then that way you just have like trick or treat on this side. And you could even make this a little bit larger. You know, you're getting the general idea, but this sort of sets you up to have sort of headline, and then you can even make this a little bit, ooh, that's a text box, that's why. Let's drop that down a little bit. You know, again, sort of giving yourself space to play around here, and then you can kind of open up. I'm trying to see if I can get that it on the, Yeah, I mean, that might be a little bit tight. You might even bring this into, give or take, where's the end of my text box here? There we go. Give or take, you know, but you can kind of see now you've sort of set up, again, this sort of more rectangular area to set up your visual hierarchy there. You know, depending on how, depending on how it's going to look there, you know, you can even kind of, I'm not sure how much I like this, but you're getting the sort of general idea. You've got, you know, you've got a decent amount of room to play. You know, if you wanted to have that a little bigger here, you know, maybe not, obviously clean it up a little bit more than I am. You know, and if you wanted to spread out these logos or even get these logos in a little bit tighter and move them over here, oops, as I mess up the logos, you know, give yourself some space here. And then again, that kind of frees up, you know, depending on how big you want to make this. And then I feel like, oh, there's the Help the World See. You could even have that Help the World See line. Yeah, Help the World See this Halloween. You could even have that line underneath here. Even if we made this logo now a little bit smaller, you know, Help the World See here. So this way, you know, you kind of have info and then like images essentially on the right. But yeah, I think that, you know, for you, it's going to be sort of more reorganizing and filling out the space a little bit, instead of having all of that free space. But I think, yeah, it's a really good start.